they discovered that a native hut takes flame easily. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere, and frustration grew. There were daily skirmishes where a few men died. The Americans had to patrol constantly and stay alert. A smile could conceal an enemy. It drained the soldiers' nerves. The weary soldiers began to realize, although few at home would admit it, that the entire population was their enemy. War correspondents who went into the field protested, "The people of the United States have not received the correct impression of the situation in the Philippines. The military dispatches err in the declaration that the insurrection can be speedily ended." General Otis imposed press censorship. The Americans held the large towns and established colonial rule. They enjoyed the support of the rich elite that had earlier collaborated with the Spanish. American business began to stretch out to the Philippines as the captive market was opened up. The Philippines had to be made safe for American beer. In their secure enclave, the military and their families began to live the pampered life of colonials that white Europeans enjoyed in their empire. But fighting outside the safe areas went on, and General Otis was relieved of his command. Once home, he blamed the failure to end the war on his political superiors, who imposed impossible limitations on the military. The American people could not understand why Aguinaldo, the elusive guerrilla leader, would not give in to Uncle Sam and come over and join Cuba and Puerto Rico and Hawaii, sheltering in the American camp. Hard-pressed, Aguinaldo asked for a cessation of hostilities in order to ascertain the desire of the Filipino people. But the only peace terms offered by the Americans were that the Filipinos should submit to being a colony of the United States. The insurrectos replied, "Why should a nation with your constitution seek to make a colony of a distant people who have been so long fighting against Spain to secure the same rights that your constitution gives?" The Americans rejected Aguinaldo's request for an armistice. He was denounced by the New York Times as the enslaver, the criminal aggressor, the designing tyrant. Where before he had been the liberator, he was now a cunning monkey who only ate Washington. Reports were circulated of barbaric tortures inflicted by the insurrectos upon American prisoners of war. But by now, American veterans of this annoying war in the Philippines were beginning to return home. After their triumphant parades through the streets of San Francisco, some of them gave their own accounts of the war that was being fought in America's name. "We made our advance against Caloocan. Secret orders were passed down our lines to burn the town of Caloocan and take no prisoners. And I know that the town of Caloocan was burned. There was not a bamboo shack left standing. And I have every reason to believe that there were not any prisoners taken." A country boy wrote a letter to his mother that was published in a newspaper. "We never left one alive. If one was wounded, we would run our bayonets through him." A front page in a Philadelphia paper carried the eyewitness account of a large-scale slaying of civilians by Americans. American troops have taken prisoner people who have peacefully surrendered, and an hour later, without an atom of evidence to show that they were even insurrectos, stood them on a bridge and shot them down one by one to drop into the water below and float down as examples to those who find their bullet-ridden corpses. The reporter went on, "It is not civilized warfare, but we are not dealing with a civilized people. The only thing they fear is violence and brutality, and we give it to them." There was widespread disgust in the United States at these reports. An anti-war movement, led by the Anti-Imperialist League of America, developed and spread out of New England. Mass meetings of protest took place throughout the country, and teach-ins against the war were organized at universities. Edward Atkinson of Boston sent some anti-war pamphlets to Manila, but they were seized before they left the United States. But Atkinson's point had been made. In Imperialism abroad would lead to the repression of civil liberties at home. Mark Twain suggested the American flag be redesigned with the white stripes painted black and the stars replaced with a skull and crossbones. Proudly, he pronounced himself a traitor to the American cause in the Philippines.